On today's show, we'll preview tonight's all-Canadian matchup between the Edmonton Oilers and your Ottawa Senators.
We'll look at Travis Green's decision to load up that top line and everything else we missed this weekend.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now, and you can win $300 in bonus bets. That's if your first $5 bet wins. Today is Tuesday, October 21st, and Pillsy, we hate missing postcasts, but if there was one to go silent for, I was pretty frustrated after that loss to the Islanders.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tough one. The New York Islanders, credit to them, but that is a team the Ottawa Senators need to be able to beat, or at the very least, Ross, find a way to get that game to overtime or shootout and get a point out of it, because losing 5-4 in regulation, having Lee score the game-winning goal with like a minute left in that fashion, too, is totally deflating. And now you're coming off a week where you played the Nashville Predators, loss, the Buffalo Sabres, incredibly embarrassing loss, Seattle Kraken squeaking out a shootout win, and then New York Islanders, a regulation loss. And now who do you get at your doorstep? The Edmonton Oilers. These are tough times.
And not just the Edmonton Oilers, but an Oilers team playing way below their skill level. Their power play has been ice cold, and that should be music to Sens fans' ears, but instead it has me terrified that they find their rhythm tonight, especially on the power play.
And Ross, an Oilers team that's on a 3-game losing streak, so they're going to be hungry. And an Oilers team that has Connor McDavid sitting on 0 goals for the season. So, I don't know. This could be leading up to a disaster for the Ottawa Senators. But I feel like every time I lead up to a game being like, all right, this is a winnable game for the Sens. They can beat this team. They can get the record going better here. That's usually when they utterly disappoint me. And then games where I'm like, oh man, I don't know if the Sens have much of a chance here. That's when they tend to pleasantly surprise me. So let's hope it's the latter here up against one of their most feared opponents in the Edmonton Oilers.
Since COVID, it's been a disaster for Ottawa against Edmonton. The Oilers are 14-2-1 against Ottawa. And the fact that I can remember the wins, the Gambrelman, Josh Norris scoring in Edmonton. You had Tim Stützle's overtime winner at home 2 years ago. They have had a moment or two, but the Oilers have had a million moments and a million goals. The Oilers have scored 73 goals in those 17 games. That's 4.29 goals per game, which is actually more than half a goal less than the Sens are averaging on the season. The Sens team goals against average right now is 5. So I'm going to skip ahead, Pillsy. No spoilers. Key to victory. Let's clean it up in our own zone a little bit. 3 or less goals against. 3 is feeling like average right now. Let's just get to that.
It's a tough ask, Ross, up against a team as offensively capable as the Edmonton Oilers, even though they're struggling, like you mentioned, struggling in their own respect or what their expectations are. But Linus Ullmark gets the start tonight, and things haven't been good for him. Sure, you can't put all the blame of all the goals against and the Sens losing on Ullmark. I feel like that's not fair, because even in that Islanders game, Ross, he came up with some big saves, like that paddle save that he had on Pajot early. Incredible. He had multiple breakaway saves, one on, I believe, is Bo Horvat, and then I forget who the other one was later on in the game, but he makes some big saves here and there, but it's just, there's timely goals where it just seems like he's either way too deep in his net or doesn't even really have a reaction, and it's a bad goal in a bad time that just loses all the Sens momentum. Like that Anders Lee goal, sure, you can put a lot of blame on Spence for getting out-muscled, but Anders Lee is a big, strong, veteran player, and he's got the size advantage on Spence, so that's not exactly a great matchup for him. Still, tough look. But then Linus Ullmark, like you gotta cover the ground low there. Lee is so tight. That's a save you should be able to make on a weak little spinorama. Nice play by Lee, but still, that's a save you gotta have, in my opinion. So Linus Ullmark needs to find ways to bounce back and get back to the performance we've seen him be able to do in the past.
Big saves and bad goals is how I would describe Linus
Yeah.
Ullmark's start to the season, unfortunately. But you have to roll with him tonight. He'll have a different backup from last week. We haven't talked since then. It was a travel day yesterday, a catch our voice day after we're both best men at weddings. Speeches, good. Speeches, good.
As far as I know, the speech was good. I got a lot of compliments on it, got a couple laughs, got a couple teary eyes at the end. So I hit on all the emotions, or tried to at least.
Nice. I don't know if I got any tears. Couple laughs, though, so we're happy about that. But while we were there, Matt Sogard was making his way to Ottawa. The Senators deciding to send Leevi Merilainen down. We'll get to that later. But the Sens are fighting fire with their own fire tonight. Loading up that top line. We saw it for a few minutes during the Islanders game where Dylan Cousins has Drake Batherson, his most common line mate since coming to Ottawa, on his right, and Tim Stützle on his left. So before you panic, Billsy, because I know you don't like moving Timmy to the wing, Stützle did say in the media the other day that it's not going to be so much a locked-in center left wing. There's going to be a lot of flow when they're on the ice and knowing they can each cover each other. So if this adds Timmy to be able to work with his speed a little bit more, have more space along the walls, I'm willing to see it because the eye test has shown pretty well from the small sample size we've had so far.
Yeah, I mean, two things can be true here. I don't love seeing this, and I mentioned that before. I called it loony lineup when some Sens fans were calling to move Timmy to the wing. So Travis Green obviously does not care what I think about that, and he moves Timmy to the wing. I don't know. I feel like your most dynamic player who's been playing center for the last couple of years and finally is doing well in the faceoff dot. And maybe he'll still take faceoff just because you're all on the wing doesn't mean you won't take faceoffs. But I just feel like you're giving him less opportunities to impact the game, which in my opinion isn't the proper way to try to improve your offense. But like you said, the eye test shows they look good playing together. Desperate times call for desperate measures. You've put all three of your best offensively talented players, other than Shane Pinto. I mean, he's tied for league lead in goals, so you got to give him that respect. But Timmy, Rich Cuz, and Batherson all on one line. Man, does that weaken the way the rest of the depth of this lineup looks. But they got to try something here, because clearly when you're 2-4 and you're losing in regulation to bad teams like Buffalo and New York, you can't just go with the status quo and run it back. So although it's not my favorite, I respect Travis Green for being like, hey, this looked good. We're going to push it.
And it also allows them to flex their muscle at center depth, where you can still have Shane Pinto as a second line center. And then Ridley Gregg slides over to the middle of the ice. And what a shift disturbing line this could be. David Perron on one wing of Ridley Gregg and Nick Cousins, poor Cuz, on the other. That's a line. If you're the other team and you're looking at the sheet in the locker room, you're like, come on. What are we going to be doing out there when those three are on the ice? But they have to be disciplined, especially tonight.
Yes, especially tonight. I have a feeling, Ross, we're going to see more of a hammer the ice time of lines 1 and 2 and sprinkle in lines 3 and 4. This is not going to be the roll 4 lines that you would hope on a team that has depth. Like, let's keep in mind, there's only one injury to the forwards here. Brady, sure, it's your captain, your top left winger, your number one power forward.
4-time recurring number 1 organizational value rankings per Sens Central.
Yes, I'm not trying to minimize the value that Brady has, but we're talking about one injury, and it's completely imploded the way this roster and lineup looks. Like I was saying to you before we recorded, Ross, there's not a single person on earth that would have set the lines like this if you knew there was a Brady Tkachuk injury, and then they would have drawn it up like this before the season started. There's no chance anyone would think this is the way the Ottawa Senators would line up. And here we are. Now, what it does is it elevates Pinto's playing time, which he was already playing a lot, even as that third line center, because he plays all situations, even strength checking line. second power play and top penalty killing unit. So it's not like he wasn't getting the ice time, but elevating him to that second line center will give him even more opportunities. And you got to play the hot hand. He is the hot hand right now. So I don't mind that. Interesting that Michael Amadio remains in the top 6. Again, another thing that no one would have predicted or mocked up, that Amadio would be a consistent lock in the top 6. And then this pains me, and I'm sure it pains Steve Staios, and it probably pains Fabian Zetterlund the most. Back on the 4th line for a guy that you had high expectations for. You just signed to a big extension, and Travis Green feels like his game is not where it needs to be, and he's putting guys like Michael Amadio and shifting Timmy to the wing instead of trusting Fabian Zetterlund to be the push that they need in that top 6. And I mean, you can't really blame this decision. Like, Fabian Zetterlund is simply not producing. Have I hated his game, or do I think he's not providing the style of game that was advertised? I wouldn't necessarily say that's true, but you got to produce, and it's just not happening. So we'll see if he can find ways to click in the few minutes he'll get now up against weaker opponents. Maybe that helps give him a spark, but for now, we're going to see him anchored on that bottom line.
I wouldn't go so far as saying anchored, though, because they've made the move of calling up Ole Lycksell. At least it's not like a zero skill line now, because Lars Eller's made some nice plays. I almost feel, and I agree with everything you said in terms of the underperformance, 2 goals in 32 games, if you include playoffs, wearing a Senators jersey for Fabian Zetterlund. But I also think that a guy like Lars Eller is going to be able to facilitate a little bit. It's going to be in minimal minutes, and until you can produce, then you'll earn your minutes back in the lineup. But I am curious to see them in the first period, when they probably have 2 or 3 shifts in succession, that they'll be able to at least have offensive zone possession. But Fabian Zetterlund needs 1. And then once he gets 1, I would like to see Travis Green, if he gets 1. I would like to see him mid-game moved up to try to use the spark to get a couple, allow him to become a streaky goal scorer. But you got to get 1 to get that opportunity. And we'll see if the Senators can get 1 or more goals than the Edmonton Oilers tonight. That's how the forwards look. We'll get into lineups for both teams on the other side. The decision to send Leevi Merilainen down to Belleville. He's already played a game down there. We'll let you know how it went. Plus, McDavid and Draisaitl. Yeah, that's a problem. So we'll get into how the Oilers look coming into Ottawa. Tonight, the Ottawa Senators game starts at 7 p.m. and it will be a TSN game where I believe Paul McLean, former Sens head coach, will be giving some intermission analysis. More on the other side. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here. The NHL season is here. And the World Series is coming up. The Toronto Blue Jays are back in the World Series since Ross and I were merely babies and toddlers. It's been a while, but they have a chance up against the LA Dodgers. And if you want to back Canada's team, do it with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. Ross loves using FanDuel, and you should too. You can bet on all sorts of things, player props, same game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Ross, I'm looking at the World Series odds right now for game 1. The Jays are plus 126 money line, over under set at 7.5. And if you want to bet on the World Series as a whole, the Jays are underdogs at plus 184 and the Dodgers at minus 220. So they've got their work cut out for them. A Dodgers team that is stacked and they're not afraid to spend money. But if you want to put a little money and get some action in on the World Series, do it with FanDuel. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add more energy to your sporting events. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Rougiette. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. Or it happens to everyone once in a while. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com orders fast-acting, doctors-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit Rougiette.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know that we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right, Pilsy, we're seeing some news coming out this morning, at least the rumor mill, from Elliot Friedman on Saturday on Sportsnet, and he spoke about it more on Morning Cup of Hockey over with the boys. Johnny Lazarus, good friend of ours, saying the Sens have made an 8-year offer to Shane Pinto. Thoughts?
I mean, part of me is surprised they went 8 years. Everybody knows my opinion on going 8 years should be kind of set only for top line guys or top defensemen. But if you want to lock Shane Pinto up, that's not something I'm against, I guess. I would personally go for 5 or 6 years just to have a little bit of flexibility. But it seems like Pinto at least wasn't interested in the offer that they gave him. I'm not saying necessarily he's not interested in an 8-year deal, but whatever that value was at 8 years is not what him and his camp are happy with.
We have spoken at length about the Shane Pinto contract, and it will continue to be a story so long as he is playing great hockey and that there's no deal done. Shane Pinto, an RFA after this year. He has 2 more years of RFA eligibility after that. So anything longer than 2 years, you're starting to eat up on those UFA years. So go check out our episode from 2 Fridays ago if you want to learn more about the Shane Pinto contract. But we're going to be hoping that Shane Pinto's performance continues and the production remains top of the league. Shane Pinto is tied with Mark Scheifele and with Pavel Dorofeev with 7 goals on the season. Scheifele and Pinto doing it in 6 games. Dorofeev's played 7 down in Vegas. That secondary scoring, as I mentioned, he leads the league. But we talk about the big line. What are you hoping to see from how Travis Green? We laid out how the lines are going to look. But are you hoping for anything different than just finishing? Because it feels like Ottawa's had possession in the offensive zone a fair bit. They're getting good chances. They've got good shot totals for and against. It's always in their favor, but they still can't finish more than they're letting up at the other end.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say I'm that upset about the finishing because they're scoring goals. Like as far as goals for, they're 11th in the league with 19. So it's not necessarily that they're not able to score. It's more taking care of the puck and keeping goals out of their net, as they are dead last in the league with 30 goals allowed in 6 games.
I guess where I'm coming from here is I'm so nervous that the Oilers are going to score at least 3, probably more tonight, that I'm like, we got to match them goal for goal. You're not going to win the shut down battle against McDavid and Draisaitl, at least historically. Ottawa, a team that they both feast on. So I'm looking at it from how do we match that? But you're saying that, hey, maybe if we just clamp down, that the finishing will be there enough?
Yeah, I think so. This is going to be a run and gun type of game. I think the Ottawa Senators are going to have to outscore their problems, and Skinner is looking like he's going to be the guy that starts tonight. And while he hasn't had an amazing season, he's been good. As I pull up the Oilers website here, in 4 games, he's a 223 goals against and a 910. So that I would even say that's better than good. I would say that's great as far as just those individual stats are. So it's not going to be easy to beat him. And the Ottawa Senators are going to have to find ways to have more than just that top line and Shane Pinto score. I'm looking at guys like Claude Giroux, David Perron, Fabian Zetterlund. Like, these guys got to find ways to exploit weaker parts of the lineup. Well, Giroux's in the top 6, but in Perron and Zetterlund's case, being in the bottom 6, hopefully going up against the Oilers' bottom 6 guys, you got to find ways to take advantage of that, in my opinion. And I'm going to be looking at those guys to step up.
Well, let's look at how the Ottawa Senators are expected to line up tonight. It was an optional morning skate, but one thing stayed together, and that was the line of Dylan Cousins with Tim Stützle and Drake Batherson. Then it's Shane Pinto between Michael Amadio and Claude Giroux. That pesky line of Ridley Gregg with David Perron and Nick Cousins. The fourth line will be Lars Eller with Ole Lycksell and Fabian Zetterlund. On defense, Jake Sanderson with Artem Zub, Thomas Chabot with Nick Jensen, Tyler Klevin with Jordan Spence. Allmark starts in goal. Matt Sogard will back him up. Are you surprised that Jordan Spence is staying in the lineup despite that error that cost the game-winning goal?
No, come on now. Like, Jordan Spence has been really good, in my opinion. He's got 4 assists in 4 games, still at a +1. Like, yeah, you get beat. It's a tough look there. That causes the game-winning goal. But I don't think that warrants enough to take him out of the lineup. And I still think he's an important part of this lineup, especially with Jensen not really being the Jensen we've seen in the past. I think you need a guy that can transition the puck up the ice and skate like Jordan Spence can. But we'll see how much of a leash he's on with Travis Green.
That's why I said surprised and not, something that you would do in particular. But I felt like the first opportunity that Travis Green could reinsert Matt and Paolo, that he would. But I'm happy with this move as well to keep them feeling confident as much as they can, because I feel like Jordan Spence already being a healthy scratch for the first 2 games of the year. It's like you can't just have him yo-yoing in and out of the lineup. Show him some confidence, some faith, and he's obviously been able to produce offensively. So can he tighten it up tonight? We'll be watching for that. My locked on player, though, is going to be, and it's a twofer, Dylan Cousins, Tim Stützle. How they decide to defend when they don't have the puck. I want to see who's got the middle of the ice, who's the one defending down low. Are they going to get their wires crossed at all? We hope not, but will there be a situation where they both kind of put their center boots on and come low in the zone and allow the puck to come up? Let's hope it's not Evan Bouchard with his bomb from the point as the guy who's back there in that situation if it does unfold. But I know what they can do with the puck. I think they're going to be a heavy line where Tim Stützle, I'm going to be watching his forecheck tonight. I know it might sound funny to say, but he's a guy who plays physical, and he's so fast that he can get in on pucks quickly. So can he disrupt the defenseman going back to get them? And we know Batherson's got that great one-touch ability. So if you separate a puck quickly, can you get it to Batherson, maybe a tap to Cousins, and it's in the back of the net? But that line as a whole is important. But for me, it's Dylan Cousins, Tim Stützle off the puck tonight. How are they going to look?
Yep, I think that's a good call. And speaking of playing physical, Ross, Dylan Cousins still leads the Sens in hits with 26. That's 8 more than the next guy, Fabian Zetterlund. So just because this is your top loaded up skill line doesn't mean they can't play a physical game. So I like that. I am nervous to see how Stützle is going to delegate the center role to Dylan Cousins, and if, like you said, they'll get crossed up. But it's going to be exciting to watch. My lookout player, and he's going to be arguably the most important player as to whether the Sens win or lose this game, is Linus Ullmark. I don't normally pick a goalie as a lookout player, or locked on player rather, but if Ullmark can get those big saves that we've seen him get, but also bear down and not allow those bad, timely goals, then the Senators could have a shot here. But if he's not able to be strong mentally and lets a weak goal in early and the Sens fall behind, I've got a bad feeling about how this could go. It could be another game where he gets beat up and the goals against just continue to pile up here. So if Ullmark doesn't have a big game, I don't see how the Ottawa Senators have a chance, honestly.
Yeah, need Ullmark to be one of the best players on the ice. And unfortunately, he didn't finish the game the last time he played against the Oilers. That was the game he got hurt right before Christmas in Edmonton. Tonight's game, though, in Ottawa, they'll be back wearing their black jerseys that they wore on Saturday. It was a nice little 2-game run with the Reds, but I'm happy to see the black 2D out there looking sharp. And I'm excited to see the atmosphere in the building tonight. It's Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl's one visit to Ottawa during the regular season, and we know that always makes for an interesting atmosphere inside the rink, because when the best players come, it brings more than just Ottawa fans out. I'm sure it'll be a sold out hockey crowd tonight at the Canadian Tire Center. How else do the Oilers line up, and why is it nerve-wracking that they are on a bit of a skid? That's next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us can't name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. Don't do that, guys. That's why you can use Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. It's going to help you organize your accounts, track your spending, and get a better handle on your investments without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. You can review everything with your partner, see your shared goals, and make better financial decisions together. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks in this economy. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
All right, Pillsy, game day for the Ottawa Senators, 7 o'clock puck drop, and we will have the postcast. It's back tonight, right after the game, live on the Locked On Senators YouTube channel. Please subscribe. You'll know when we go live. It's usually about 20 minutes after the final whistle. Pillsy, there's bad news, there's worse news, but let's start with a conversation about the goaltending with the Ottawa Senators. Leevi Merilainen sent down after just one start this season. Did it go well? No. But you also had Mads Søgaard play a game in Belleville. It went well. They lost in overtime, but he had a pretty decent game. What was your thoughts initially when you saw the news come across on Saturday?
I was a little surprised, not going to lie. But I think this needs to be framed not as a demotion of Merilainen or even as a promotion for Mads Søgaard. I think the way I'm looking at this is from the viewpoint that the Sens are like, all right, we know we put our confidence in Leevi Merilainen to be the backup this season. However, he doesn't need waivers, and we need him to be feeling confident, because when he's confident, we've seen what he could do. Even in a small sample size last season, he was absolutely incredible, and you could argue that literally he saved the Sens season last year. So let's send him back down to Belleville. No waivers, no worries, no concern he's going to get picked up. The Sens had a bit of a break, a Saturday afternoon game, and then they didn't play again until Tuesday night tonight. So let's get him in a Belleville game. Hopefully he can feel the puck a little bit more, get his confidence back. Now, he did allow 5 goals, but on 40 shots, so 35 saves in, yet again, a Belleville Senators loss. But I think they're just trying to get him in a position where he can get starts, he can feel confident, and he's not sitting on that bad Buffalo loss waiting for another chance to redeem himself. And then, God forbid, he gets that chance, lets in a bad goal early, and then it's like, oh my God, you start spiraling out of control here. So I actually think this is a decent move by the Senators. Do I think Mads Søgaard is going to get starts while Levy's down there? Probably not, Ross. Maybe one start or
next
or
Tuesday against Chicago looks like it would be the one. Second half of back-to-back with travel.
But I'm not even sure that Merilainen won't be back by that point. Like,
maybe they can move Mads up and down without waivers for another about 3 weeks. So that's not a thought in here. And you also look at Belleville having 3 games in this week. They play Wednesday against Laval and then Saturday, Sunday against the Toronto Marlies, both in Toronto. So yeah, he could definitely be up by the end of the weekend, but we'll see if Mads gets a game. I don't know if I want at this point to see that, but if he was, Chicago would be the play next Tuesday.
Yeah, but I mean, that means you have Allmark starting 4
Thursdays,
straight games with only one game
5
or 1 day in between all those, which isn't the end of the world. Before everybody gets on me, Bills, he's a athlete, he makes $8.25 million, he should be able to do that. Yes, I agree. But when Linus Allmark is statistically one of the worst goalies in the entire NHL, I'm not necessarily saying I want to see him all of those games if he doesn't turn it around.
Yeah, okay. We'll see what happens because the Sens have tonight and then Thursday at home before they go out on a 3-game road trip to Washington. Oh, it's at Ottawa on Monday. So look, this schedule. Anyways, we don't complain about the schedule on the show, but if we did, we'd have a lot to say about the start of the season for Ottawa.
It's been brutal.
Thursday at home, Saturday on the road in Washington, then at home against Boston on Monday, and then they fly to Chicago to play the next night at 8:45 Eastern. So keep an eye on that next Tuesday, later start.
And then they come home against Calgary.
And then they're back on the road against Montreal.
Oh my God. I mean, Montreal, Ottawa, that's not, I mean, none of these are terrible travel, but it's still travel.
Yeah, exactly. And switching time zones for a back-to-back. Anyways, a Western Conference team fan would hear that and be like, dude, we got
Dallas Stars fan.
got 3 time zones in our conference. You guys have 1. Like, can we settle down here? It'll happen. Yeah. So you know what? Maybe that'll fall on deaf ears. The play of Connor McDavid isn't falling on my deaf ears. 6 games, no goals for Connor McDavid. Now, he did have 2 goalless streaks of more than 6 games last year, but he said in the summer he wants to shoot more, and then to come out here and not have a goal, it makes me extremely nervous. And I said, there's bad and there's worse. That's my nickname for the next 24 hours for Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. Torch the Ottawa Senators. Minimum 21 games played against Ottawa. Leon Draisaitl has the 5th most points per game. That's bad. Well, what's worse is no player in NHL history has more points per game against Ottawa than Connor McDavid. 1.77 points per game. If you're doing the math, that's 46 points in 26 games against the Ottawa Senators. He's going to be my lookout player. And before we even do the lines, Pillsy, Connor McDavid is a scary hockey player. He's fast. His feet and his hands move as fast as his brain, which processes quicker than any other player in the National Hockey League. He's a complete problem, and I'm so happy that he re-signed in the Western Conference because the less I see him play against the Ottawa Senators, the better. It feels like I see 30 highlights of McDavid against Ottawa, and I'm like, dude, he did this all in 26 games. This is outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, McDavid is scary. And now I know you mentioned Ross, 0 goals on the year. He said he wanted to shoot more, but it's important to note he still leads the Edmonton Oilers in points and is above a point per game player with 7 assists in 6 games. So it's not like he's been absolutely dried up or he's got nothing going offensively. Obviously, he wouldn't want to be sitting on a 0 in the goals category, but he's setting guys up, and Draisaitl, like you mentioned, a very dangerous player up against the Ottawa Senators as well. However, my lookout player is going to be number 28, Jack Roslovic, on the second line with Nuge and Mangiapane. And just because I didn't want to just go, I knew one of us was going to pick McDavid or Draisaitl, so I wanted to switch it up a little bit. It's going to be interesting to see how a guy that didn't get to play with them in camp, joined very late, he's only played 4 games with them, will do in a top 6 role with this team that's had a lot of turnover overall in their roster, especially on the forward side of things. So I'll be interested to see how Jack Roslovic handles his ice time.
Well, he knows a thing or two about turnover. He's played for 4 teams in the last 3 seasons. And he's also been to the conference final 3 times in 10 years in the NHL, with Winnipeg in 2018, and then in back-to-back years, most recently with the Rangers and the Hurricanes. He signed late in the offseason and still trying to get his feet under him.
During the regular season, Ross.
What?
The Roslovic signed in the regular season, not even in the
it had already started.
Yeah, games were already going. Yeah,
I thought it was during camp.
No, I think literally the Oilers were playing, and then like they put on the Jumbotron, like we signed Jack Roslovic 1-year deal.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Well, they're also trying to stay afloat here while Zach Hyman remains out of the lineup from wrist surgery that he suffered in the Stanley Cup final. So no Zach Hyman tonight. Matthias Janmark also injured for Edmonton. Their extras are Troy Stetcher and #Sens Abroad, Curtis Lazar. Connor McDavid's their top line center with Vasily Podkolzin and Leon Draisaitl. So to make matters worse, they're loading up with McDavid and Draisaitl playing together. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, their second line center between Andrew Mangiapane and Jack Roslovic. You've got Philp on the third line, centering Trent Frederick and Matthew Savoy. And the fourth line is Adam Henrique with Ike Howard and with Philip Tomasek on right wing. On the back end, Matthias Ekholm and Evan Bouchard. Darnell Nurse with Jake Wallman, who makes his season debut after being injured for the last little while. Brett Kulak playing with Troy Emberson. And in goal, Stuart Skinner. The Edmonton Oilers are coming off 3 straight losses, most recently to the Detroit Red Wings. They also fell 5-3 to the Devils and 4-2 to the Islanders. This is the final game of a 5-game road trip for Edmonton. And I'm going to leave you with this, Pilsy. The Oilers' power play is 1 for their last 13.
Yeah, that's got to scare you if you're the Ottawa Senators penalty kill, which
maybe they just don't have that much talent on it.
Yeah, let's go with that. A weak power play unit, or I mean, they load up their top unit. So if you could stop that top unit, that's big for the Sens. But yeah, I'm worried. If we're talking FanDuel bets to hit, Ross, I'm looking at the over. I think there's going to be a lot of goals scored in this game total, and I think McDavid point is is it fair to say that could be a Leevi lock, Ross?
Yeah, but I also think that is still pretty minus money. Like, you might have to look at 2+ points. But look, hey, I don't think a track meet benefits Ottawa. So let's hope they make it a nice 3-1 game.
No chance.
3-1 final score prediction.
All right. I hope you're right. I anytime I'm confident about something, it ends up blowing up in my face. So that's probably what's going to happen here, which I hope it does.
Yeah, me too. It would be great to see a win tonight because the Ottawa Senators are 2-4 through 6 games. The Edmonton Oilers, they're not much better. They're 2-3-1 on the season. They've got 1 extra point, OT loss.
Again, Ross, I hate to be this guy, but I would be stoked to get an OT or shootout loss here. Like they got to find ways to get points, honestly. Like, obviously, again, guys, don't drive off the road. Don't get your fruit ready to throw at me. Obviously, I want to win here for the Sens, but a team that handles the Sens like the Edmonton Oilers and is arguably just as desperate for a win, if they can just find a way to get this past regulation, that's good in my books after not being able to defeat Nashville, Buffalo, or the New York Islanders last week.
Senators' 5 goals against average is tied with the San Jose Sharks for worst in the National Hockey League. So we're looking for that tonight. We're looking for the penalty kill to click at more than 60%. Is that fair? They're second last in the league in PK.
That's fair, Ross. I said before, let's get them above half the time, so 50%. So we're working on small incremental goals for the Ottawa Senators. So yeah, I think that's fair. Let's get better than 60% on the penalty kill.
Let's play guess the Oilers power play tonight. What are you thinking they finish off with?
Unfortunately, I think the Sens are going to be a little bit undisciplined with the speed and talent that the Oilers have. Again, I don't want this. You're asking me to predict it. It's not what I want. I'm predicting. So I think the Oilers are going to have 4 or 5 power play opportunities. And I think they're probably getting two goals on those opportunities.
2 for 5 honestly wouldn't be the worst in the world. I was thinking more 3 for 4 type thing, but hopefully it's the other way and the Senators power play can produce here. And look, the Senators, they don't have their captain, but they also can't afford to let this keep sliding. They don't have a regulation win since the first game of the season. That, I think, kind of tells the tale. And the mistakes are so obvious too. Like, that's the other problem. It's like you can point to the penalty kill, you can point to the untimely goals, and you can point to the fact that they are just not finishing. I still don't think they're finishing enough of their chances because they have the edge so in their favor in scoring chances throughout this winless in regulation streak, if we'll go with that. I don't see how a team that puts this much on net and around the net isn't able to be in the top 10, top 5 in the league in scoring.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. They're 11th.
I know. That's
so
why
they're right
I
there.
doubled down. Give me 5.
Yeah, okay. And Ross, like, you look at it, their regulation win, which was the first game of the season, seems like ages ago, that was a miracle comeback win. And then their only other win was, I won't call it a miracle win, but they tied it up late and then squeaked out a shootout win. Like, they haven't even had a clear-cut 2-goal lead win yet. Like, like the only points they have, they're barely scraping by the skin of their teeth there. So like this is not a confidence building start for your Ottawa Senators or the fan base.
Well, they could get it started tonight. We'll see you in the postcast after the game. Pills, any final thoughts on today's show?
Final thoughts for me. I feel like we've hit on a lot here. Oh, I wanted to mention this. How nervous and scared was everybody on Saturday's game when Pinto crashed into the net after being tripped on that breakaway? Like, I don't know about you, Ross, but when I saw that, I was like, if we're without Brady Tkachuk, we're starting this bad, and the only bright spot of our team now gets injured, we might just have to pack it in. But thankfully, Shane Pinto, tough guy, gets up, doesn't score on the penalty shot, but like that was a sigh of relief when you saw that he was okay, because that looked bad.
It did not look good. In that situation, would you have preferred a 2-minute penalty to the penalty shot? You're up a goal and you're shorthanded for another minute and 50 seconds.
No, only because he's the hottest player on your team right now. Like if
But
there's
he also just crashed into the boards.
Yeah, I mean, fair. But if there's a guy that you want to have a one-on-one, no variables situation to score a goal, it's Shane Pinto.
Of course.
And he did score his shootout goal earlier, so you feel confident that he's got some mojo there.
He scored on a penalty shot last year too, if I'm not mistaken. Or was that Norris right after when they had the back-to-back shorties?
Yeah, I think Norris got the penalty shot goal. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, Shane Pinto couldn't get it there. It would have given Ottawa a 2-goal lead in the third period. And the rest is history. But new history will be written tonight. So fun to be back, honestly. Like, we recorded Friday's show Thursday after the postcast. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, we're like, what do we do with our hands here? We had to get on and catch up from over the weekend. So a lot to get to in today's episode. And we have plenty more tonight, right after the game. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Shout out to everybody for making us your first listen each and every day here on LOSP. Thank you for watching, listening, subscribing, and engaging with the show on social media. You can find us at Sens Central on Twitter. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.